And keeping right on track, Dana Timaeus, managing partner with the Timaeus Law Firm, will introduce our guest speaker.
Well, it's real difficult for Texans to understand a guy like Matt Quinn, but he's like a hero to folks like Garrison Keillor because he was an English major. And not only was he an English major, he was an English major at Texas A&M University. Yeah, where they speak like 7, 8, 10 different dialects of English. 4 or 5 of just Texan, maybe about 3 of Aggie. And then he went to Little Rock, Arkansas, but he didn't mosey up there like a Texan. He matriculated because he went to the University of Arkansas Law School, after which he joined the DA's office in Little Rock and worked there for 4 years or so and worked his way up into major cases and gang stuff and, serious, criminal prosecution. Now, along the way, he made his smartest decision, marrying the perennially 29-year-old Shanna, like 23 years ago. And they've got 2 semi-grown kids, Eli and Evelyn. And about 19 years ago, he decided that he would join the federal legal department that we euphemistically call the United States Department of Justice, and has been through several positions there, gotten awards from Attorney General of the United States, a few awards from the FBI, working big cases with them. And at this time, he is the first assistant U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Texas. In that capacity, he works the entire Eastern District of Texas, which is from the Gulf of Mexico all up the Louisiana border to Texarkana, in some weird little appendage that goes out to Plano and comes back, and then drops down back to the coastline again through Hardin County, Liberty County, down to Jefferson County, and across. Working the office of the U.S. Attorney is really working 6 offices. There's an office in Beaumont, one in Lufkin, one in Sherman, one in Marshall, Tyler, and Texarkana. And overseeing 45 lawyers and about 60 staff that are technical, clerical, administrative. And I don't care who is appointed and confirmed. At the bottom of this system, at the top of this system, all the way from the bottom to the top, the guy who really runs it is Matt. He is the manager of the civil division, the criminal division, the appellate division, the administrative division. So he not only oversees all the work that the lawyers are doing, he's overseeing all the administrative headaches of all the staff. The guy who really makes the Eastern District of Texas U.S. Attorney's Office work is Matt. And so to tell us how it works, here's Matt.
Does anybody want that job? Because I'm not sure I do after hearing all that.
Jay's in charge.
Howdy, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that generous introduction, Dana.
In my cruise attire.
I wish I had Larry's voice. I heard him talk and thought, man, that is a voice for radio and face for TV. That's awesome. I wish I could talk like that. It's an honor to be here today. Really to speak to the best Rotary club in the country. I've had the pleasure of being here several times in the past as guests of visitors, as guests of members, including my wife Shanna, who's been a member here for several years. And I can honestly say I've never been treated better. Maybe when I go to church, people are as friendly to me as you are here. Thank you so much for your hospitality. It's second to none. I was asked to give a State of the Union address of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Texas and give you sort of highlight some of the things that we're doing for you, the ways we're serving you in East Texas. And as Dana mentioned, we do have 6 offices spread across 43 different counties here in East Texas, all the way from here in Jefferson County on the Gulf of Mexico to the Oklahoma border. Dana is correct. We do have sort of a weird district which goes over the top of Dallas. We are responsible for Collin County and Denton County, as you may be aware, is experiencing huge growth right now in their population. Millions of people moving into that area of the state. The majority of our lawyers in our district are criminal prosecutors, but we do have a civil division that handles some civil cases for the United States government. I'll tell you, the Eastern District of Texas is doing great. It's really to our court system's credit, our federal judicial system's credit. And Judge Crone, I don't think is here. I didn't see her. Retired federal magistrate Judge Keith Giblin and our future DA in Jefferson County is here. But to their credit, they really kept the judicial system going during the pandemic. You know, crime didn't stop because of coronavirus, and so we couldn't stop our work. And really, I think the courthouse shut down for about 1 month. And since July or June of 2020, we've been up and running. Some of it by Zoom during the early days of the pandemic, but mostly in person, having court, having jury trials, and doing the business of the people here in East Texas. Of course, precautions were taken in court and around the office, and COVID-related delays and obstacles were addressed, but really our casework did not slow down any. Our stats, which, you know, we don't live and die by our stats, but I am proud to tell you, if you go back to 2019, prior to the pandemic, we indicted right around 1,000 defendants across East Texas. In 2021, last year, it was over 1,350 defendants. We filed 224 more cases than the average district our size across the country. We're considered a large district. There are small, medium, large, and extra large districts in the country. For example, South Texas, which includes Houston, is an extra large district, and they have a lot of the border. We're a large district, and we're prosecuting way more cases than your average large district in the country. We're doing a lot of work. We learned, of course, a lot of lessons during the pandemic that we could still get the job done while remote working. I'm sure many of you who own businesses had to get creative, had to adapt during the pandemic, just like we did. And our staff was professional enough to do the job that had to be done. We have implemented since the pandemic. We came back to the office full time in March of this year, and since then we've implemented a work-life program for our employees where they can telework 2 days a week, depending on your job description and how long you've been in the office. But we're finding that to be a huge success so far too. Our district priorities are really set by the Attorney General and the President, whoever's in office at the time. And right now, our priorities include reducing violent crime, preventing elder fraud, reducing the illegal drug supply that's entering our country from foreign nations. And of course, as always, our international and domestic security are top priorities for our office. Regarding violent crime, if you haven't noticed, violent crime around the nation is booming, and it has been really since the pandemic began. The numbers are really off the charts when it comes to violent crime. In response to that, we've rejuvenated the Department of Justice's Project Safe Neighborhoods program, which was created in the early 2000s. And as part of that initiative, our office works closely with local police departments and sheriff's departments and district attorneys' offices to target known violent offenders and work to make federal cases against those thugs who are terrorizing our communities. We have great relationships with the Beaumont Police Chief, Jimmy Singletary, Tim Duraso in Port Arthur, of course, Bob Wortham and Judge Giblin here at the District Attorney's Office in Jefferson County. And as part of those relationships, one of the things we're doing is creating top 10 lists of known violent offenders in communities and targeting those individuals on the list smartly. research shows that 60% of violent crime in a community is committed only by 6% of the population. So we can figure out who those 6% are that are the shooters, that are the robbers, that are the carjackers. If we can get them off the street, your community is going to be safer. For example, here recently in Beaumont and Port Arthur, we charged and convicted an individual by the name of Derek Glau, who had robbed 7 convenience stores in Beaumont using a purple pistol. We dubbed him the Purple Pistol Bandit. Maybe you saw it on the news. He received a 20-year sentence. That guy, after he robbed the stores, went on social media posting pictures of himself holding a pistol gun and fans of cash, wearing the same outfits that he wore during the robberies. He's not smart, but he's got the next 20 years to think about that. We also charged and convicted a man by the name of Charles Knapp, who carjacked a guy who was leaving his house to go work his shift work at the plant, and stole his truck at gunpoint, put him on his knees in his front yard, held a gun to his head, got the truck, and as he's driving off, shot the victim in the arm, nearly killing him. And he's serving over a 20-year sentence in federal court now. Elder fraud is also another big priority for us. And although it is a priority, we're really not intaking a lot of elder fraud cases. And that's not because the crime is not happening. It's really because it's difficult a lot of times to identify the perpetrator. It's difficult to get evidence. And quite frankly, elderly victims are a lot of times embarrassed to come forward and discuss the fact that they've been a victim of a crime. So looking at that problem, what we've decided to do is try to do our part in preventing elder fraud from happening on the front end. This month, June, is Elder Fraud Awareness Month. And so each of our offices are offering speakers and presentations to any groups of senior citizens that can receive and spread the warning of these scams that target our greatest generation. If we can stop one of our seniors from being victimized, then it's going to be well worth it. The presentation discusses the various scams to be on the lookout for, and it talks about how to report it if you've been a target or a victim of a scam. So if anyone knows a good audience that we could make that presentation to, whether it be a church group, a senior citizen home, or any other group of senior citizens that you think would be appropriate, please feel free to let me know. We can try to arrange that for you. International drug trafficking has always been a priority for us. Our organized crime drug enforcement task forces have been a long-standing priority in the Eastern District. And we rank #1 in the country, our district here in East Texas, #1 in the country for extraditing drug lords from Guatemala to the United States. Drug lords that are importing cocaine or methamphetamine into the United States. We're top 5 in the country for extraditing Colombian drug lords into the United States for federal prosecution. And our drug prosecutors have played a major role in the last 10 years of building and maintaining relationships with our foreign law enforcement partners. We travel regularly to Colombia, to Guatemala. I was in Mexico City last year meeting with foreign law enforcement officials to discuss ways that we can stem the flow of drugs to the United States. Just a few months ago here in Beaumont, we indicted a group of Colombian drug traffickers who had over 4.5 tons of cocaine destined for the United States. Think about that. That's, what is that, 9,000 pounds of cocaine. Any ideas how they were transporting that here? Any guesses? What? I'm sorry? No, not 9,000 pounds. Not trucks, submarines. 2 submarines. They had left Colombia and were intercepted off the coast of El Salvador, and the drugs were destined for the shores of our country. So we could stop that from even getting here in the first place. That's what we want to do. We're not, at least at the U.S. Attorney's Office, targeting the corner drug dealers here in Beaumont, the small-time drug dealers. We're not targeting marijuana drug dealers. we're targeting the drug cartels in foreign countries. National security, of course, is always a top priority. Everyone remembers the international terrorist attacks on our country on 9/11 that claimed the lives of nearly 3,000 people. Just 2 months ago marked the 27th anniversary, if you can believe that, 27 years since the domestic terrorist bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, where 168 people, including 19 children, lost their lives. Those events and other more recent domestic terrorism events really keep those issues in a forefront of our minds and our attention. We join with our law enforcement partners daily to navigate the maze and mountain of information and disinformation that relates to our national security. It's a daily, tedious task to discern between real threats as opposed to the loudmouth, ne'er-do-well idiot in his mom's basement on social media posting threats or potential threats. We got to figure out what's real and what's not. And that's not always an easy job. And I compliment our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners for this thankless task. For in all the complaining, do you take a moment to realize what horrendous crimes don't happen? Because our partners are quietly behind the scenes, interrupting and preventing the future attack. So I want to talk about a couple of big cases that we've handled the last year or so, and one of our bigger drug cases, we prosecuted a man by the name of Hugo Shavira. He was a high-ranking member of the Zeta cartel in Mexico. He's now serving a life sentence here in the United States for his part in importing tons of cocaine and methamphetamine into the United States. What really made him infamous was he and his cartel members believed that an informant in the town of Allende, Mexico, had been informing against him. And so in retaliation, his gang went into that village and murdered over 300 people in that village of Mexico, burning their bodies, men, women, and children, in a barn, and then burning down all the houses and structures in that town. The story was highlighted on National Geographic Channel. I don't know if anyone watches that, but that might be something you could Google and search and watch that story. A couple of our prosecutors in our office were highlighted in that story. We just recently got a life sentence for a man by the name of Wilson Luargas Garcia. He's a reputed Guatemalan drug lord who had shipped, again, tons of cocaine, both to the United States and also to the Colombian FARC and other insurgents in Central America. Once he was extradited to the United States, he continued to run his drug empire from jail by bribing jail guards here in the United States to smuggle in cell phones for him. He also made threats against the lives of several of our prosecutors, and these jail guards and other folks here that helped him are under investigation and being prosecuted. Many of you may know, as business owners, during the pandemic, the federal government issued paycheck protection loans called PPP loans. And a lot of these were done by the Small Business Administration and other federal offices. Well, there was a lot of fraud associated with that, as you can imagine, with free money being pushed around everybody. And so here in Beaumont, we indicted an engineer and a wedding planner who claimed they had businesses and hundreds of employees. It was all fake. And they got about $17 million of our tax money free. And so they've been prosecuted. A lady by the name of Monica Ruiz, talking about elder fraud, she was just sentenced to 97 months after she convinced an elderly victim, a man, to give her money because she claimed she had been in a car wreck, she had been in a coma, she needed brain surgery, she needed a kidney transplant, all these different excuses for this man she met online. And he ended up giving her $4.8 million of his retirement money. And now he's broke. So something we got to protect our seniors and our elderly from this kind of stuff, because they're vulnerable and people are targeting them. In the largest indictment ever in the Eastern District of Texas, we indicted 101 defendants as part of a large-scale crime ring that targeted Electronic stores. This group had robbed Best Buy's, Verizon, AT&T stores of their cell phones, their tablets and laptops, and then shipped them overseas to the tune of over $100 million. That case is currently being prosecuted in our Plano office. We just got a 30-year sentence against a pastor for the sexual exploitation of children. That's a big crime that we see at the U.S. Attorney's Office. This guy set up cameras in the bathrooms, the showers at his church to film nude children. And he'll spend the next 30 years in prison and hopefully die there. There's several other cases that I can talk about, but that's I think you get the gist of what we're doing. And we're trying to serve you, the taxpayers here in East Texas. We're trying to do a good job for you to protect you and keep you safe. And one last thing I want to mention to you before I go, and if you hear anything I say, please hear this. Can anybody guess what the #1 killer of adults aged 18 to 45 is right now? Any ideas?
Fentanyl.
Sorry? Drugs? Fentanyl. Somebody said it. Fentanyl. Last year in 21, there was over 100,000 overdose deaths in the United States. That's more than gunshot victims and car accident victims combined. Okay. Fentanyl is killing people, multiple people every day. And it's not just your, drug addict in the back alley with a needle in their arm. Okay, this is your kids. This is your grandkids. This is my kids. These are people you know that are dying from overdosing from fentanyl. What's happening is, fentanyl is a synthetic drug. It's got legitimate uses in hospitals, but it's being imported from China, sometimes directly into the United States, mostly to Mexico, and then the cartels are importing it to the United States through our southern borders. And you can buy a kilo of fentanyl for a very, very cheap price, and it goes a long way in making drugs. What people do is they buy pill presses, they mix the fentanyl with other things to create a pill that looks like a Xanax pill, or it looks like a Percocet pill, or it looks like an Adderall pill, and they sell those, and they can make literally millions of dollars off of just a $10,000 investment. And so, what you don't have though is a chemist putting the correct amounts of this fentanyl in a pill press. You got a junkie in a garage with a pill press scooping fentanyl into a pill. And so you got a hot batch that's going to kill a bunch of people sometimes. Or you have one person that takes a pill with fentanyl in it that's never had fentanyl and they're not used to it and they overdose and die. If you Google fentanyl right now, you'll see all over the news about it. We just had at the University of Texas, I think a dozen students before the end of the spring semester overdosed fentanyl. They were taking what they thought was Adderall to help them stay up late and study. It was fake pills laced with fentanyl. We partnered with Texas A&M University and the high intensity drug trafficking area task force group out of Houston. We call it HIDA because you got to have acronyms if you're with the U.S. government. HIDA, and they're funded by the federal government, and it's a mixture of federal and state law enforcement agencies that participate in that. And so a couple things we're trying to do. One is we're trying to get Narcan, which is a drug that reverses the effects of overdose. You just spray it into someone's nostril if they're overdosing, and it's like a miracle. They wake up and they survive. And we're trying to get that in the hands of all our first responders in the state. It's just so important that our first responders, our EMTs, our law enforcement officers, and really I think even all of us at our homes should have Narcan on hand. The other thing that we're doing is a public awareness campaign called One Pill Can Kill. And soon, if they're not up already, you'll see billboards across Southeast Texas that highlight that message, one pill can kill, and it highlights a victim that looks just like your kid that overdosed and died because they took a pill one time in their life, all right? And the victims' families are gracious enough to share that message publicly so no one else has to go through what they did. And so be on the lookout for that. Please spread the word to your families, to your kids, to your neighbors, that one pill can kill, and not take anything that they get off the street from somebody. All right. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you very much.
We have time for questions. I'm sure there are some. If anybody has questions.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, research shows 6% of the community commits 60% of the violent crimes. And so we've actually hired a research partner who's a professor at Texas Christian University to come in and analyze all the crime stats in Beaumont and Port Arthur, help us identify hot spots where the crime's occurring and who's committing those crimes and how they're being committed, so we can smartly target the folks that need to be targeted.
All right, the blue mailboxes that are around town, is the theft from those boxes increasing, and are they safe to use?
So they are safe to use, yes, sir. There was a string of thefts from those recently that I'm aware of, where I think I don't know all the details of the case. I believe someone got a hold of a copy key to the mailbox and was from a corrupt employee and was stealing mail out of those. But that's been stopped, and I haven't heard of any issues since then. And I think they're safe to use. Now I use them.
Well, I'm the same question. I actually got a check stolen through the postal service. Morning, I talked to people from the police department, and they said that they thought they had solved that crime, but instead they're now thinking there's an inside person apparently being worse.
Okay, yeah, that's new information. I haven't heard that yet, but I can find out. And obviously it's a federal crime, and we would be involved in that, assisting the Beaumont Police Department with
Well,
that.
she also said that it seems to be used.
Yeah, it's weird. All our mail goes to Houston.
That's the only
Back to us to be delivered for some, that's why the postal service is underwater, I guess, but, sorry about it. So yeah, that could be what's happening. As our mail goes to Houston to the processing center, there's somebody there that's stealing it. And, but I'll find out what's going on. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Can you speak to the rash of catalytic converter thefts?
It's not a federal crime, and it's not something that I deal with. I only can speak to it as to, what I see on the news like you see. And I know our police departments are working really hard on it, and it's just they're such easy targets, I think, for thieves to steal. And I don't know if they take them to the scrap yards or they sell them. I don't know what they do. I think they scrap them.
I heard they're after the rare minerals.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't really have a lot of information on that. I'm sorry, it's just not something our office is involved with. It's more of a local crime issue. Oh, certainly. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. She asked about the catalytic converter thefts, which are on vehicles right now that are being cut out and stolen and sold for scrap. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. Dana asked the difference between, what's a 20-year sentence in federal court as opposed to a 20-year sentence in state court. There's no parole in the federal system. So if you get 20 years, you're going to do 20 years. The only thing that you do get is some good time credit, which is only 15%. So you're going to serve, assuming a person is convicted in federal court and they're the model citizen in prison for their entire sentence, they're going to serve at least 85% of that sentence. That's the best they could ever get out of there with, is 85%. So, it's in state court. I'm a former state prosecutor, and parole is a big deal for for the state, you get a 20-year sentence. Depending on the crime, you may be out in 2 years, and on parole for a while. So we work real closely with local law enforcement, and for the worst of the worst, we want to try to get them in federal court to get that hard federal time. That's what we like to do. Yes, ma'am.
Where are these drug lords that are prosecuted, where are they serving their sentence?
Sure. She asked where the drug lords that we prosecuted, where they are serving their sentence. We have federal prisons all over the country. One here in Beaumont, as you know, a big complex, and they get sent all over the place. Some of the worst. We have the one who is threatening our prosecutors that I mentioned earlier that got a life sentence. He's actually in what's called ADX, which is that's where Timothy McVeigh and some of the other really bad. It was Chapo, that just got sentenced. You may have seen it in the news. That's where they go serve their sentence in Colorado. A lot of them go here to our federal prison in Beaumont, Louisiana, California. They're all over the place. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. He asked how these submarines are making it all the way to the shorelines in the United States. You've seen maybe news stories about drugs washing up on shore and on Crystal Beach and Galveston. I mean, I suspect that's a lot of ships and submarines that have gone down that were smuggling drugs. You put 4.5 tons of cocaine on a homemade submarine, and it's probably 50-50 whether it's going to make it here. A lot of times they'll go to they'll stop in Mexico first and then drive the drugs across in 18-wheelers and other through tunnels and other things like that to get the drugs here. But we're seeing more and more semi-submersible submarines. They're not like our U.S. Navy submarines that can go 300 feet or however underwater. I mean, they're semi-submersibles. But they're very hard to detect, obviously, in big, wide open oceans. Yes, sir. Sure. He asked about the 6% and kind of who that is. Is it gang members? I think it varies from city to city. Here in I can speak to Beaumont and Port Arthur, we don't really see a lot of organized street gangs like you would in Chicago or LA, the Crips and the Bloods, maybe you've heard about back in the 90s. Honestly, it's more just groups of neighborhood kids that grew up together and as juveniles commit a lot of crimes. Our juvenile crime, as Ms. Rogers can speak to, is just out of control. We don't really prosecute juveniles in federal court. We don't really have a way to do that. Juveniles are responsible in state court, and the system is just it's not good. And so they flounder through the juvenile system, and by the time they're 18, they're already shooting people, they're already robbing people, they're already dealing drugs, and that's when we run into them. But I wouldn't say it's organized gangs. I just think it's just kids that don't have good home life and that they turn to a life of crime and get sucked into it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Matt, so much for that informative presentation. That was interesting. And to recognize you for speaking to us, we are going to make a gift in your honor to the Rotary Foundation in the area of peace and conflict prevention and resolution. Looking ahead, announcements. Remember, don't come here next Wednesday. We are not meeting here at the hotel for lunch next Wednesday because we at 6 o'clock next Wednesday are going to be at AMSET, Art Museum of Southeast Texas, where we will be, singing, dancing, doing all kinds of things for the Swan Song, drinking, eating, all of that. So please come join us. Bring all those Rotarians that haven't been coming. Make sure to have a large crowd because Brad wants a lot of people there. Please, 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 please remember to pay your dues before June 30th. As you know, we need to pay Rotary International whether you pay your dues or not. So we don't want to pay for you. We want you to pay. After we adjourn today, we have a couple of committee meetings. The Hospitality Committee is going to meet with Chair Jeff Beaver, and the Toasted Swan Song Committee is going to meet with Jay Wilson. Remember to talk to Pat Anderson, make his 4th of July happy, his birthday 4th of July happy, by helping him give out flags. Remember to volunteer for Beep Baseball. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I mean, how often do you get to do that? So sign up and get your free t-shirt. And paper. And thank you for attending today. I needed the notes to tell me that. Please stand and join me to say the 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First. Second. Third. And fourth. Have a great week, everybody, and serve to change lives.